welcome to the Movieception Show. I am Fariba, and we're just about to watch the second episode of She-Hulk. And just to kind of give a little bit of a recap from the last episode, or the very first episode, essentially that episode was just kind of giving us an idea of how Jennifer was able to manifest her powers in the first place, right? Just giving the basis of it, so the car crash, and then of course, then she has her whole bonding with her cousin, Bruce Banner, and of course, we had it was like a really great episode just because you got to see a lot of this great dynamic between Bruce and Jennifer. And then of course it ended up with the fact that, well, we go back to the present day, and then here we have, Jennifer having her first encounter as kind of being a superhero. So now that we're kind of going back into the present day, we're going to see more of just how her powers is going to affect her in terms of just like the whole real world setting, now that the world kind of knows that she's She-Hulk. So that's going to be an interesting bit going forward. I don't have really any predictions at this point because I feel like it's just, I think what we've seen in the trailers are going to show up here, and we're just going to see how it goes, right? So without further ado, let's get started with episode 2.
A She-Hulk? A She-Hulk?
A She-Hulk?
That's right. No, that's for somebody called She-Hulk, which can't possibly be what they're.
Unsportsmanlike to suddenly debut superpowers just to drum up publicity for yourself.
Only you would think that.
So seriously, how did you get these powers?
I really don't feel like talking about it.
Nepotism. Knew it.
No. Take a lap, Dennis.
Nepotism.
Vigilante, that is for billionaires and narcissists, and adult orphans for some reason.
But you could be an Avenger.
Adult orphans.
Do the Avengers offer healthcare? Maternity leave, a pension? Are they even paid?
Here's the thing, though.
This is the second time they mentioned this.
Right?
Jen, can I talk to you for a moment? No, Jen, I'm sorry. I have to let you go. This makes you a liability for the DA's office.
Wait, you're firing me?
That figures. Attorney for hire.
Stanley, message.
Hey, Fuzzball, I'm going to bring it up.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jen.
You got fired. Chad! Said to bring it up. I say don't bring it up. Why would I tell you to bring it up? Sorry, Uncle Mom. She already feels like complete crud.
It's okay, Dad. Yes, got fired, but it's fine.
Big news! So I got promoted to manager over at the Best Buy.
Manager, all right, Chad. Employed and promoted, right?
Oh, Jen, there is the nicest. But I gave him your number
Oh
so
my.
they could call you for advice.
Please stop giving my number out to strangers.
Again, that Hawkeye
That's very.
guy.
Oh,
What happens to those arrows of his? I mean, does he go around and collect them when he's done?
Jenny,
Nobody calls me that.
I'm just going to put this out there. Melanie, as a stylist, she could help you.
Let's get this hair more like She-Hulk's.
So, back to Hawkeye. It's pretty hazardous to leave those things lying around. Appreciate it. How you doing, kiddo?
aw.
I'm okay.
Really?
No, I'm not okay, but I'm okay with not being okay.
Uh-huh.
Because it just sucks. I thought I could keep this at bay.
Sweetheart, it's gonna be okay. This isn't even the first time we've had to deal with a Hulk in the family. And you didn't destroy a city.
Oh, dang.
It does feel like a weight has been lifted. But there's
For us.
you got me fired, now you want to hire me.
To be head of a new division, yes. Take some time.
I accept.
She didn't even listen to the division.
I will only do it if I can hire my own paralegal. Non-negotiable.
I truly do not care who your paralegal is.
Yes.
You start Monday. We just started a Superhuman law division, and I want you, the She-Hulk, to be the face of it.
Oh,
That means I'll expect you to be at work and in court as the She-Hulk,
Oh.
not as a
normal person.
Right now.
Is this why they hired me?
This sucks. I am totally qualified, but now everyone around here is always going to think this is the only reason I got the job. It's so unfair. I should be able to enjoy the fact that I just got an amazing.
I'm curious, what do you think about it?
I'm agnostic.
Interesting. Unprecedented for sure. Huh. Oh.
I'll spend the rest of the year worrying about what I just said.
Oh, here we are. Your office.
Yes, a fully stocked mini fridge and a desk. I mean, this is normal, but this is very fancy. I'm gonna have to buy an entire.
Also known as Abomination, Mr. Blonsky has been serving a sentence in an ultra-high security prison.
I'm very familiar with Mr. Blonsky, sir.
Yeah, that's quite all right. Mr. Blonsky is well aware of your familial connection and has signed a conflict waiver. He would like to retain you specifically as his attorney.
Interesting.
I have to say I'm not comfortable taking this case. I would much prefer to be assigned literally any other case at this firm.
If you don't take the case, then you don't have a job here.
Oh.
At the very least, you should meet with the client.
Oh, Emil Blonsky.
First off, Namaste.
Mr. Blonsky, I was expecting.
Abomination, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I transformed myself. Yeah, physically, obviously, but also spiritually.
Does that mean that you can't turn into the abomination anymore, or you won't?
No, it means that your cousin, the Hulk,
My cousin Bruce.
semantics, he was of the Hulk, wasn't he? You know, I tried to kill him. You know, so let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
It wasn't personal or anything. So, I was under direct orders from your government.
But then you went on a destructive rampage in Harlem. That wasn't sanctioned by the government.
Yeah, because they pumped me full of that super soldier serum.
The serum the government gave you caused your subsequent actions?
I was a highly decorated soldier.
That means we're
You know,
probably going to
sent
see Secretary
on a mission
Ross.
to take out a threat. And I thought I was the good guy. That I've written, oh boy, to each of my victims expressing the sorrow.
Oh, you don't have
If you'd like to
Oh,
experience
no.
them. My tiny ears here.
If I were your attorney, I would advise you to speak truthfully from the heart instead of trying to gauge what you think they might want to hear.
Hey,
Jen,
what's up?
Bruce, hey, listen, I got a new job.
Hey,
But none of that matters if you don't feel comfortable with it.
I think you're calling me to tell me you're taking the job.
I'm calling you to tell you I'm taking the job. Yes.
That's great, Jen. You should. Actually, Blonsky wrote me a really nice letter a while back. And a really heartfelt haiku. So we put everything behind us. Said that fight was so many years ago, I'm a completely different person now. Literally.
Interesting.
So you're sure you're okay with
Completely
that,
different.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Completely different.
Sounds like you're okay with it too. It's a big step in the world, cuz. It's not easy going public. What'd they end up naming you anyway?
She-Hulk? Don't.
Attorney at law.
Oh.
Hey, the title of the show.
Some strings attached that I'm not so happy about. It's gonna be a lot to navigate.
It all worked out. You got. I got some things I gotta take care of.
Okay.
He's going to the car.
All over, I guess.
He's going to
Is right.
Yes.
Have a good evening, Miss Walters.
You have a good evening, sir.
So far, there have been no statements made by Emil Blonsky's attorney after shocking footage leaked showing the abomination participating in what appears to be an underground fight club after having somehow escaped from prison.
Oh. That sucks.
That's from Shang-Chi.
I don't know what 4K is. Is instinct nobody does, but you still need it.
But I don't know what I'm doing now.
I'm turning left, I'm turning right. Look,
10 o'clock,
it
right,
just
John,
turns the
you-
wheel. I don't know what to do. Turn it down. Good.
Do not touch these wires again.
No.
I could have done that.
There you go. Yeah, watch out for the lamp. Yeah, good. Come on up.
Wow.
I'm glad you're staying hydrated, Dad, but this seems a little excessive.
Oh, here, I got to that. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So that's the second episode of She-Hulk that we just watched, and right off the bat you can tell that it was definitely a different episode in a sense, because at least in the first episode we kind of got this really big surprise about Jennifer's beginnings of becoming She-Hulk, the basis of how she became She-Hulk in the first place, and then just like, the fact that she had her whole training with Bruce. In this one, it's kind of like we're seeing a bit more of who Jennifer Walter is, and not just the She-Hulk, but who is Jennifer Walters, right? I feel like that is something that kind of gives us a bit more of a better idea of who Jennifer is, her character, and everything like that. I mean, from the first episode, we can tell she's just a very human person. That's great and all that. And that she's just somebody who wants to, who dedicates her life to being an attorney, that laws everything that she wants, so on and so forth, right? But here it's like we kind of see a bit more of who Jennifer is, and kind of just this conflict that is, like, even though her She-Hulk version is not as, diabolical as the way that Bruce had to handle the Hulk back in, the early MCU days, right? But even then, we kind of see that there's still that conflict where, well, now she's dealing with more of the public perception of how people think of her and how she needs to abide by those standards, right? And so that's something that we kind of see right here. I mean, again, and I think that even though it is a much more of a mellow, slower episode, it isn't as, like, action-packed or, explosive, everything like that. I think in a sense this is kind of a really good thing considering what we've seen so far in the MCU, like in terms of just, the TV shows, just because at least in some of the past TV shows we've seen issues where, of course, 6 episodes, right? We've always had 6 episodes, and they just go by way too fast. The pacing's just off, and it's just kind of like we don't get the chance to kind of understand what's going around, or having this breather to kind of just digest the information, right? Whereas here, even though it wasn't as hi-fi, bona fide, or it wasn't as exciting of an episode as many people would think, it actually works just because of the fact that it's kind of just setting up things. This is a 9-episode series, so instead of just going way too fast, just get into the big stuff, it's just really starting to kind of set the pieces together, especially because here it's like this episode is dedicated to the fact that, well, now she's lost her previous job as a, trial court attorney, and now she's about to become the head of the superhero law division that they have at that law firm, and that's going to change kind of the spectrum of everything that's going to happen, especially because there isn't that whole aspect or just the understanding of how the legal processes work in the MCU. I think that's like the one thing that's been a bit absent so far. I mean, yeah, we had the Sokovia Accords, and that's like the one thing that we probably have heard of any legal stuff, right? But even then, like, in terms of just the details of it, we don't have a lot of information about, and I feel like that's something that might be brought up in this show. We don't know yet, but considering the fact that this is now kind of setting up, what's going to happen moving forward. I mean, for one thing, we did see Emil Blonsky, right, played by Tim Roth. So now that he's finally in the picture, we know that, okay, so he's going to be involved somehow in the whole arc of the series, right? And now it's just getting into the bits and pieces slowly. I actually appreciate the fact that they kind of decided to go in that route instead of just, going all, let's put all the high hitters right in an instant, right? Like, instead of just doing that, it's like, okay, let's create this show as if it is almost kind of like a proportion of just like a movie itself, right? I mean, a typical movie would be like 2 hours, right? But here, of course, we have 9 episodes. That's almost equivalent to like what? Each episode is like what? 25 minutes, so almost 4 hours max, because I'm not going to count the credit scenes, right? The credits, right? But with that being said, right, even for just having 4 hours of content, like, I appreciate the fact that they're kind of taking a bit slow and just trying to develop the story, because I feel like developing the story is the most important aspect of trying to create a story, right? Especially with a new character like She-Hulk, where most people don't really know her, unlike characters like Hawkeye, Loki. We've met them before, so at least in a sense for them, like having a bit more of a faster pace, it made sense. But here it's because She-Hulk is definitely a new character. It does have to take time to kind of understand who she is, what she's going through, understand who she is as a person, of course, and then of course the fact that this is more of a legal comedy show, that we're kind of seeing a bit more of her humorous personality, just to kind of understand who she is, right? Now, aside from that, right, again, I really appreciate the way that they kind of did the pacing for it. We're not going way too fast with it. That kind of gives me a bit of a relief knowing that, okay, we're going to actually have a story. So that's a big relief right there. Just a couple of things I want to also remark. There's the one thing, so we see Bruce again. That's great to see. I mean, I was really curious how they're going to handle the whole situation with Bruce Banner and Emil Blonsky, because it's been, 13, 14 years? I think in the show, I think it's 15 years, because it is 2023 or 2024 for them. For us, it's 2022, but yeah, so I think we've all had the question of how they're going to address the whole situation with the Incredible Hulk, because the Incredible Hulk, we know that Edward Norton played the Hulk / Bruce Banner, not Mark Ruffalo, and Mark Ruffalo didn't come in until the Avengers, which was 2 years later. And of course, there's just a lot of issues that happened behind the scenes with Edward Norton, and at that point, it's just, he was no longer with the MCU, and then they brought in Mark Ruffalo. But because of the fact but ever since then, we haven't had any, a Hulk-centered film or project of any sort since. We've just mostly been seeing him in more like the team-up films, like the Avengers, and then even his, appearance in Thor. Like, that's kind of more like a team-up for him. And here, it's like, yes, it's kind of giving a bit of his story a little bit, but also it's not about him. He's just kind of giving more of a, being the moral support for Jennifer's, but even then, right, we haven't seen him in his own film. We haven't we haven't seen him have his own arch nemesis that's personal to him. And the only one we have seen is, of course, Emil Blonsky. And so now that with Emil Blonsky involved in the show, the question of the matter is, okay, how they're going to address the whole situation with the Incredible Hulk. So, in a sense, they kind of answer that. I mean, they acknowledge it. It happened. I mean, they've mentioned Harlem. They mentioned the fact that, conflict of interest, because, of course, again, like, Bruce and Emil do have a history back in the Incredible Hulk. So that's one thing, right? But I think the more important matter is how Bruce would react, because, again, this is a Mark Ruffalo version, kind of addressing a situation that he didn't really play. It was by Edward Norton. And I mean, for one thing, we see that apparently they've, in some cases, you can say they made up, in a sense, that there's been, a conciliation. It's just been, they've let bygones be bygones, right? And that's one thing that we've seen, although I don't know, again, like, I can't say for sure if this is Emil being really like that, or if he's just really just deceiving everyone. We'll see, right? We have 7 episodes more to go, so we'll see then. But the fact of the matter is that the fact is that Mark Ruffalo's version is the one who's acknowledging the fact that he forgives him, he's okay with it. And there's the one joke where it completely went over my head for a quick second, and I noticed it right away. Is where he's like, those were different times then, or it was like he was a different person there or something like that. There was something with the word different, and then I realized, it's more of a remark of the fact that, okay, well, of course he wasn't there because he wasn't the Hulk then. It was Edward Norton. So that was a really hilarious kind of gag right there, just kind of like a really way of just, funny way to address that, because I thought it was like, oh wow, they really put that in there just to kind of get that quote unquote remark of he wasn't exactly, he is the Hulk, but he wasn't exactly that version of the Hulk then. Hilarious. But yeah, that was the one thing I really wanted to mention, because I was just kind of like, oh, that's hilarious. Kind of like shade, but I appreciate the fact that they're still addressing it. Like, they're addressing it and they're not letting that get over their head. So I love that part. What else? Of course, I mean, the post-credit scene, I mean, it's kind of like one of those useless ones you always get. I mean, it's like equivalent to basically the way that Captain America did that ad where it's saying patience. That's kind of how I felt with the post-credit scene, so it didn't really mean anything. But although, again, it makes sense in this case because it is a comedy series, so I guess it's kind of just how the post-credit scenes are going to be like, kind of more on the more humorous side. What else? The fact that they addressed the Shang-Chi thing, that's going to be an interesting part because, again, I think we all knew just in our perspective that he was, in the cage fight scene against Wong. And so I'm going to assume that in the next episode we're going to see Wong show up because he was fighting against Wong. And I mean, technically speaking, I believe from the film he didn't escape per se, but he was given a temporary permission to kind of, go out. So that will be interesting bit to see how they're going to address that. One thing I will mention now that I've finally thought about it. So Emil talked about the fact that, okay, the reason why he even ended up in this place wasn't really his own will, but the fact that, it was the government that would put him under this position, that he was manipulated, he was taken advantage of because of the fact that he was in a super soldier program and all that sort of stuff, right? And then I think instantly I was thinking, okay, does that mean that we're going to see Secretary Ross show up? Because if you're going to defend a guy like Emil Blonsky, and if you're going to try and show that, well, this is a guy, I mean, I don't know law that well, right? I don't have any experience in law, but for what I'm aware of, is that if you're going to, address something regarding about your client, then you're going to have to, bring in certain people to kind of show that, well, it's because of them that he ended up like that, right? So I'm getting the sense that we're probably going to see Secretary Ross. Back then he was General, but now he's Secretary Ross, just because he was the one who conducted the different secret soldier program that Emil was a part of, and that because of, the deal that they had back in the Incredible Hulk, that this is kind of why he's in that position, why the whole Harlem thing happened, why he was so obsessed about, becoming the major super soldier, right? Like, that's everything that happened in Incredible Hulk, and it makes sense here why, like, okay, so why he's being defended, why he, needs Jennifer's help, so on and so forth, right? So I am curious to see if Secretary Ross is going to show up in the show, more in terms of the more court scenes. I'm going to assume that there's going to be more of those court scenes. I think at this point, anything that's shown up in the trailer, aside from Wong and the Daredevil, has now appeared in the show at this point. Like, we've seen all the Hulk montages. We've seen, the situation with her joining the new law firm. One thing I also want to mention is the fact that we did see Bruce go off in space in the Sakaar, spaceship. So I'm very curious to know what that's about. I don't know if does that mean that that's the last that we've seen of Bruce. I'm gonna assume that might not be. Maybe, who knows? But I'm curious to know if this is kind of implying anything about a Planet Hulk sort of storyline, or if this is gonna set up something for like a possible project. Very interesting to see about that. I feel like that's just something that they're kind of playing on for maybe not for this show, but for like a future project. So I'm curious to know if whether they are planning on making a Hulk-centered movie or project of some sort. Like, even though I just mentioned they haven't done one in like forever, could this kind of be a hint that we're going to have one? I can't say for sure. I mean, again, we won't know. I mean, we do have D23 just around the corner, so who knows what they're going to announce then. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this episode. I think I've covered everything that's happened so far. Again, I think for what it is, it's a pretty solid episode. It's not meant to be, it's not meant to have all the episodes be like, all action, all glory, whatnot, right? Like, it's nice to have a bit more of those episodes where it's important to develop the character and the storyline than just trying to, have all the explosions of everything, right? So yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. I mean, again, this is a solid episode for what it was. But yeah, let me know what you think. Did you like this episode? Do you agree with what I have to say about, the fact that this is kind of taking a bit more slow, just to kind of give, the ability to kind of just, let the story just kind of wrap around itself, just, develop all those pieces? Or did you really want it to have boom, boom, fight scenes and every 5 seconds, or who knows? Not to, again, everyone has a different taste, right? What are things that you did like? What are things that you think might have been implying about the whole Sakaar spaceship scene where Bruce was in outer space? Do you think Emil Blonsky is genuinely, a changed person, or do you think he might be onto something else, or he could be deceiving everyone? Like, I mean, again, what do you think? What are your predictions? What do you think is going to go on moving forward? Let me know down in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.